This is going to be part 1 of chapter 11, Motivation and Emotion. Okay, so when we're talking about motivation and emotion, of course, we need to know the definitions as the textbook would give. And motivation is basically those set of factors that would help to activate, to direct, as well as help maintain behavior. And it's usually going to be geared toward a particular goal. When we're speaking about our emotions, this is now more of talking about those subjective feelings that we would get. How we feel, like our heart racing, and when we're thinking, our thoughts, our value systems, the expectations we have in life, as well as expressive behaviors like our smiles, our frowns, even when we're running. So first thing we need to look at are those theories of motivation. Now, there are 6 major types of theories that we deal with when we're talking about motivation, and they're broken up in between biological, psychological, as well as psychosocial. So with the biological, we first deal with instinct, and that's when our motivation's kind of innate. It's that inner feeling that we get. It's those biological instincts that we'll have. These are not learned responses. These are all unlearned, and most of us have them. Okay. When we're speaking about drive reduction, this would be a type of motivation that starts biologically, or due to a deficiency, something that we're desiring and needing, that would elicit a drive toward the particular behavior that's going to help to satisfy that original need. And pretty much what we're doing is we're trying to always reach homeostasis biologically. The third one would be called optimal arousal. And this is when we as an organism, or humans, or even animal species, will be motivated to be able to achieve as well as maintain optimal levels of arousal. You can think about in terms of hunger, you could think about in terms of sex. Those optimal feelings that we try to get, that's what we're speaking of. In terms of psychological, there's 2 areas. The first one being incentive. This is when we're seeking out to get something, when it says external stimuli, that's going to help to push us in a particular direction. So, for example, wanting that 4.0 at the end of this journey means what? The incentive, it would be to get the A in this class. Okay, so you're going to do everything you can to earn an A. The second one is cognitive. This type of motivation is basically affecting our expectations as well as our attributions. It looks at how we're interpreting or thinking about not just ourselves, but the actions of others. The biopsychosocial, now that's where we'll talk a little bit more later, but we'll be looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And pretty much his belief is that we're in this stage, so to speak. When we're talking about a hierarchy, we're looking at different levels of achievement, and those things help to motivate us to do more. So let's look at those biological theories a little more closely. Okay, as I mentioned with the instinct theory, we're looking at those innate factors that are genetic levels of motivation. In the earlier days of psychology, researchers like William McDougall back in '08, not 2008, but 1908, he kind of proposed that humans had numerous instincts, like repulsion, curiosity, self-assertiveness, while there's been other researchers that kind of added on to that, and they said that, their favorite instincts, um, and they came up with a list of recognized instincts that became really, really long. I mean, one researcher actually had a list that was well over 10,000 type of human instincts. Now that was in the 1920s. Additionally, that label instinct led to more unscientific type of explanations. Men are aggressive because they're instinctively aggressive, or women are maternal because they have a natural maternal instinct. Well, we've learned over the years that a branch of biology called social biology was able to revive the case of instincts when strictly defined. One social biologist, Edward O. Wilson, back in the 70s, he kind of believed that humans also had instincts, like competition or aggression, which genetically transmitted from one generation to the next. When we're talking about drive reduction theories, now this came about in the 1930s, and its concept was that drive and drive reduction pretty much began to replace the theory of instincts. According to the drive reduction theory, a researcher named Hull back in 1952 saw that when biological needs like food, water, and oxygen were unmet, this created a state of tension, which is considered to be the drive. And what it did was create, and the organism was motivated to try to reduce that drive. It's that tension. You want to reduce and get rid of it. Remember, term homeostasis. So, drive reduction theory is pretty much based largely on the biological concept of homeostasis. And that term literally means we're trying to stand still, or you know how I like to say it, woosah. Now, according to optimal arousal theory, here organisms such as humans are motivated to be able to achieve and maintain optimal levels of arousal that hits their maximum performance. Either too little or too much arousal can diminish that performance. Okay? So we want to try to hit that right level, but if we overshoot it, it can throw us off. If we underachieve, that'll also throw us off. So, sensation seeking. What motivates people to bungee jump over deep canyons, like or like Will Smith jumping out of a helicopter with a bungee cord? Or what about people that do that whitewater raft down dangerous types of rivers? Well, researchers found that these high sensation seekers may actually be pre-wired biologically because they're in a need to get that higher usual level of stimulation, excuse me. And researchers also found that there's four distinct factors that help to categorize sensation seeking. So the first one listed on this slide is thrill and adventure seeking. And pretty much these are individuals that might do skydiving, or they love to drive fast, or they'll even try to beat a train. When the train's coming and they're driving, they're going to try to beat it across. I don't know about them, but they are what we call the thrill and adventure seekers. Now you have the second category, which is talking about experience seeking. These are individuals who might want to get something from traveling, or they'll try drugs, or they'll pick up on friends that they might normally wouldn't make friends with. The third one, disinhibition. Think of this as letting it loose, okay? Just things that you would not normally want to do because you might feel embarrassed about it. Well, if you're sensation seeking, these individuals, they're going to let it all out. Say they go, for example, to a nudist beach and just undress. That's letting go of their disinhibitions. Then, of course, you have I can't pronounce anything right now. Susceptibility to boredom. This is when we're talking about lower tolerance for repetition or sameness. Now, being very high or very low in sensation seeking might cause problems with relationships with individuals who may score toward the other extreme. So A person that scores high with sensation seeking, and if they hook up with somebody who's not really trying to do all that, might find it a little difficult to be with their partner. Um, but it doesn't only just mean partners or your spouse. It can also be parent and child. It could be between a therapist and a patient. There might also be job difficulties for high sensation seekers, and that's in routine clerical or assembly line type jobs, or for low sensation seekers who are in those highly challenging and variable type occupations. Now, let's talk about those psychological theories of motivation. First one up is incentive theory. So, unlike the drive reduction theory, which states that the internal factors will push people in certain directions, incentive theory maintains that the external stimuli or variables are going to pull people toward those desirable goals or away from those undesirable type goals. Most of us will initially eat because we're hungry, and that pushes us. That's that drive reduction theory. But the sight of apple pie or ice cream may pull us toward continue to eat. That would be the incentive theory. So now let's look at cognitive theory. According to this theory, motivation is directly going to be affected by one's attributions or how we may interpret or think about our own or other actions. So, if you receive a high grade in this course, for example, you can interpret that grade in several different ways. You may have earned it because you really studied and you lucked out. Or the textbook was exceptionally interesting and very helpful. That's going to be my preferred type of interpretation for y'all. Thank you very much. But interesting enough, research have been able to demonstrate that people who attribute their success to personal ability and effort tend to work a little harder toward those goals than people who attribute it to luck. Okay. In terms of expectant, what we expect, expectancies or what we may anticipate or assume will happen, there's also those important cognitive theories of motivation. So you anticipate a grade on your test to affect your willingness to study. If you get an A in the course, then you can say that you studied very hard. Similarly speaking, your expectations might be regarding future salary increases or promotions at work, and it'll affect your willingness to work overtime for no pay because you're looking to get that what? Meet the goal. All right, now let's look at the hierarchy of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Abraham Maslow, his theory is about how our lower motives, like our physiological and safety needs, has to be met before we can advance to any higher type of needs. That being like wanting to belong with others or trying to reach what we call self-actualization. Self-actualization means that you're content and fulfilled, that you've reached what I call nirvana. You're at the highest state of contentment. Okay, but as you look on a slide, you can see where it starts. The bottom tier is talking about we first have to get through the hunger and thirst, being able to keep our internal state of our bodies in check and keeping homeostasis. If we're able to do that, we'll move up to our safety needs. What are safety needs? Those things that's going to help keep us feeling safe, makes us help to go look for pleasure and avoid pain. That can be keeping a roof over our head, maintaining the safety of, who we meet and how we meet them, making sure that they're okay. Um, and of course, our survival skills kick in there in terms of making sure that we do not get hurt in the process. And of course, belonging and love needs. We want to be, we all would love to be connected in some way or another, some more than others. But it's that if we don't achieve it, Maslow feels that well, then you can't keep moving up. That means if you don't want to belong and satisfy those needs of love, then your level of esteem, you're not going to be able to push for uh, high self-esteem, because you'll have difficulties with achieving, with your level of competencies in this area, or you'll have difficulty because you'll be always seeking approval and never thinking you're getting it, as well as having problems with performance and excelling. If you can't get to that point, then self-actualization, according to Maslow, will not happen. Now, here's the thing with Maslow. In his writings, he actually spoke about how he really never felt that most people can get to self-actualization. But, of course, there's criticisms that would say he's a little too broad-based. And speaking about criticisms, the critics would argue that parts of Maslow's theory are poorly researched, as well as biased toward Western individualism. Additionally, his theory kind of presupposes that it's a homogeneous life experience, and people sometimes try to seek to satisfy those higher level needs even when the lower level needs have not been met. So you'll have people who feel that they are content with the world even if they don't have money, even if they don't have a roof over their head. They could be homeless and still be happy with them within themselves. So that's where the argument lies. As that is highlighted on the slide, we normally will fill the basic needs first. However, situations may cause people to pursue higher level needs before lower level needs. If I can get that great job, then I'll be able to feed myself. I'll be able to keep a roof over my head. So you see, it's going to be that more of a top-down type processing. And this is where I'll stop with part one. There will be a pickup for part two in the next video.